I'm Joanna, and today I'm joined with
Mark. Hello.
Mark will be sharing his journey through mental health. So could you please introduce yourself and tell me about your story and what you've been through?
Well, my name's Mark. As you said, I'm 36 years old. Not as young as I used to be. My story with mental health really started in my when I was doing my A levels. And it particularly started that's between 16 and 18.
Mm-hmm.
And it really started with exams. I found myself getting really stressed with the exams, and I found it difficult to do them, and I ended up having to take them in a room on my own. And that was where it really started, with the anxiety started really. And it sort of then escalated from there. When I got to university, after my first semester, when it came to the exams in the January, I found it very difficult to do that, and I was diagnosed as having OCD, Obsessive-compulsive disorder, which was a shock, but it kind of explained a lot of the things that had happened in the previous couple of years.
So you had signs of OCD from previously, but you were not sure what it was.
It started with the anxiety with the exams, and then it started with the anxiety of living away for the first time. When I was at university, so I was in halls of residence, and it started to manifest itself not only in the exams or in pieces of work in stressful situations, but also in situations like leaving my apartment. So locking the door would take me a long time, checking the windows, how to turn the tap off, etc. It became really all-consuming. And when I went home at Christmas time before my exams in January, I basically got to the stage where I said I need help, and that's when the diagnosis happened. So.
Wow. So how long did it actually take you to realise that you needed to seek help? What was the...
Well, I've been seeking help since I was 16, starting with my exam problem, but I'd seen a counsellor, but it was actually that when I started at university, that I really realised I needed to see a psychiatrist a person who could give me an actual diagnosis, rather than just sort of... I'm not saying the counsellor wasn't of use, of course she was, but I needed that little bit extra as well for a person to give me a diagnosis. And so, when it came, it was a half a shock, but also half a relief, because it then gave me a framework in which to move forward in terms of the medication, the therapy, and what I needed to do to get well again.
Yeah, and also, was it easy to find that help?
It was quite difficult at the time. The waiting lists for the NHS were quite long, and I was fortunate that I was in a position where my parents were able to pay privately. But excuse me, that is a concern I do have for a lot of people. The time they have to wait, particularly in Nottingham, to get to see a relevant professional, and that is a concern, because obviously if the longer the person is in a bad situation or a difficult situation, the longer perhaps the worse it could get, and the more catastrophic the consequences could become. So that is a concern for me, yes.
Wow, that's true. And what other mental health difficulties do people face?
You mean men?
Women, anyone,
I think anxiety is a huge issue. I think with the pressure we have with social media to look, to behave in a certain way, the pressures from schools, families, that achievements, particularly academic achievement, is all important. I think it's for a lot of anxiety, depression, issues with self-worth. I also think that this 24-hour lifestyle that we have, that with smartphones, with the internet, that people actually don't have the time or give themselves the time to actually say, how am I doing? How am I doing? To check in with themselves.
That's true.
I think that is a consequence of the lifestyles that we have nowadays.
So, usually it's quite hard to define what mental health is, but I looked into it, and according to the World Health Organization, mental health is defined as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community. What do you think of that definition?
I think that's quite a long definition, but I think there's a lot of truth in that. I do, definitely. I think in a more shortened way, I would say that having a mental health difficulty is something that basically has a negative effect on your life, and that can stop you from doing things, can make things harder, and can actually cause a lot of chaos in your life. That's sort of how I would describe it, not only for yourself but also for the people around you as well, because I think it's important to look at mental health holistically as well. Mental health, if I take the example, I suffer from obsessive-compulsive disorder, that yes, it's affected me primarily, but it also affected my work colleagues, my family, my friends, my neighbours, anybody I came into contact with it. So the effect actually was quite. It wasn't just it wasn't just happening to me. So I think it's important with mental health to realise that the ramifications of it and how wide they actually can be. I mean, that could stop somebody. That could mean relationships break down. Children don't see parents. You know, it really is. You know, it can have really devastating effects if the right help is not sought. You know, so I think it's really is a huge issue.
It
really
definitely. Is. And in terms of mental health, so I was just looking into statistics of like suicide rates, and I found out that in 2017, 5,821 suicides were recorded in the UK, and out of those, 75% were male and 25% were female. And I thought that was a very huge gap. It was not even like half and half. It was way big. But then further on doing my research as well, I found out that it's easier for women, not that it's easier, but women tend to report and seek for help earlier than men do. So why is that?
I think those statistics are, you know, I see that myself from afar at least. But yes, I think there's a stigma. There is a real stigma. It's still quite intrinsic within males. If this, I'm talking generally here, pejoratively, but this I can deal with it. I can man up. This phrase "man up," or I can deal with it. It's not an issue, and it's so silly when you think about it, because if somebody who was manned up had broken his leg, he would go to the doctor or the hospital with no problem. Yes. So why wouldn't he, if he was having a problem with his mental health, do the same? It really doesn't make any sense. But I think there is this feeling of this fear that people have of feeling weak or appearing weak amongst their peers, to their family, their partners. And actually, in my experience, the people that have actually spoken out and said, hey, you know what, I do have a mental health difficulty, I found there's been a lot of positivity towards it. People say, you know, good on you, well done. Yeah. So it's breaking that stigma and saying, you know, it really is the cliche. It's okay to be okay, and it's also okay to tell people about it.
That's true.
You know. So
would you say it's to do with the way we've been brought up in society? How, for example, children growing up, like a little boy hurts himself, they'll be like, you know, you're a man, you don't cry, you're strong.
Absolutely.
You know, while as with the women, we're allowed to express ourselves. So as a result of that, we now have men who are growing up and, you know, holding on to their emotions. They don't share it because they feel like doing that, like you said, is a weakness. You know. So
I think that's been society, particularly in Western society, in UK, British society. I think that's really unfortunately embedded within our society. I'll give you an example of an organisation I volunteer with called Time to Change. It's a national initiative, but we've got a hub here in Nottingham, and we're particularly focused on one of our areas of focus is on males, particularly males in the construction industry. That's been cited as being a real issue of.
Oh, really?
Yes, yeah. Where perhaps in situations where there's a very macho culture, and that has led to a lot of people who work in that industry suffering from a mental health difficulty in comparison with other industries. But again, as a group with Time to Change here in Nottingham, we're trying to normalise that. We've got quite a diverse group of males, different ages, different backgrounds, and we're trying to put the message out to say, you know, we've had mental health difficulties, we're a diverse group, but we're talking about it. And we think that by talking about it, we can not only help ourselves, help each other, but we can also help perhaps wider people that are watching and listening,
Yeah.
to give them some support. And that could be just listening to us or actually getting involved themselves. So I think, again, it's just awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there also like help offered for families who have lost loved ones by suicide? And
There are various organisations, particularly Nottingham and all over the UK, that can help with that. There are also organisations that are culturally specific as well, because that also is an important part of, I think, how one deals with grief can often be affected by one's culture. And we live, for example, in Nottingham, in a very diverse community. So yes, there are organisations that can help with that. And I think that's important, because we're not just saying mental health is, can be treated by one specific type of person in one way. We're saying there are many different ways. And that the ways of treatment are just as multifaceted as the ways that mental health can affect people. So I think that's really quite good. And we're starting to see that. And I see that in Nottingham, which is a relatively small city. Men in certain communities of all different types, of all different backgrounds, are experiencing. And, if we could just get over that and just to say, look, it's okay to come and talk about it, but we have to realise, in order to achieve that has to be done very, very slowly, very with care, with empathy, and with time. And I think it comes down to the old adages. It comes down to education, But unless we start talking about it and having the discussion, it's difficult to move forward.
Yeah, I agree. And for you personally, how was it being able to talk to people about it? Say friends, family. Did you feel stigmatized?
I wouldn't say stigmatized. I think I was quite fortunate. My family were very supportive, as were my friends. I think it wasn't so much stigmatized. It was more the feeling that I always had to explain. So if I had to explain, and once I explained, then I was okay.
Yeah.
But it was this feeling, everyone I met knew in whatever situation, I had to say, I have to tell you my secrets. And that was really quite tiring and quite, at times very difficult. So, and until I'd explained that situation, the person knew I had OCD, I didn't feel right. But I look back and think retrospectively, why did I need to say that? Sometimes I felt I needed to say it, and that was more the issue, rather than I was persecuted or stigmatised. But I know that was me, I was fortunate. But I know other individuals who've had all sorts of, difficulties. So it really is a very varied, there are lots of varied outcomes, but, all I can do is try to put across my story and say, it's okay, it's okay. I'm still a man, I'm still here.
Yeah.
I'm still alive.
That's strength.
And I've got the strength,
So would you say that there needs to be more education on mental health? Because the fact that you always had to go out and explain what it was in order for people to understand and, be able to help you as well. So would you say there's a lack of that education?
I do. I think within schools there's a lack of education, particularly, I'm not sure what, and when I was growing up, there was nothing. I think it's for both sides, from the sufferers, but also for people. It's for the sufferer to impart information onto other people. So don't expect people to know.
Yeah.
So do your research about your own difficulty, but also that we perhaps promote as communities, as culture, as people. We foster this idea that it's okay to have a difficulty, and that we get what's called this parity of esteem, where society looks at a mental health difficulty in the same way it looks at a cancer diagnosis or a broken leg. I always think it's really quite funny quite funny, but amusing, when a person breaks their leg or breaks their arm. People buy them sweets or buy them flowers. They even write on their arm, and it's actually, for some people, it's a status symbol. It's actually a rite of passage. I broke my, in a weird kind of way. But when someone has a mental health difficulty, it's treated with fear and contempt. And is it because it's not visual? I don't know. There's a lot of things that don't add up.
What you mean. It's almost like you have to be very careful around the person. You don't want to say things that might trigger them and stuff like that.
But you'd be careful around someone with a broken leg, because you wouldn't want to, if you touch them, it might hurt, So there isn't a difference. It's it's a very peculiar way in which as societies we approach it, you know. And when we actually analyse it, it doesn't often make a lot of sense the way how the society's thinking about it.
I think it's all about normalising and having people to have these discussions. The more people talk about it, the more acceptable it will be seen. And I guess more people will come out and, you know, share their stories and perhaps will
that's the hope.
Lives.
Yeah. That's the hope. And the hope that people can listen to stories, listen to people, and actually can get some help, get some support before it gets to a critical stage. And that's why speaking out, that's why I think it's so important to do that. But it needs to be more, it needs to be, you know, a real cross section of society that speaks out, not just people from one particular community, but all different communities, because we all have different ways of operating, different ways of thinking.
That's true.
But the overarching point must be that we should look at mental health in the same way we look at other difficulties. And at the moment we're not there yet, but by doing things like we're doing now, I think, you know, we're on the right track. So, you know, and so I imagine in larger cities the provision is hopefully wider. But we're on the right track. I really do believe that, you know, I do.
Yeah, and I don't really think that people really talk about the impacts of suicide.
No.
It's one of those subjects that's a bit of a taboo.
Absolutely.
Like somebody dies and the family will obviously go through grief for a long time, but getting to sit down and really talk about it is something that's still very sensitive.
Absolutely.
And the impact it leaves behind in terms of, say, if it's fathers, you know, they've left their kids, their wives, and it's just...
I mean, the ramifications can be huge. I mean, I don't think there is one specific way to go about that. I just think it's about making people firstly aware that there are different ways there are different types of help out there. But not just signposting people, also perhaps helping people to access help as well, particularly in suicide, because it's okay to say, you know, look at this website and go to a meeting, but maybe that person needs help to access the website or to go to the meeting. So I think we can do more in that sense to actually, when we signpost, to actually, in some cases, take some people by the hand and say, come on, we'll go along to it, or I'll wait outside while you go in.
Or somebody going to their house, perhaps.
Yes,
some people,
bringing it to them, exactly.
Yeah, some people are not in the position to leave their house.
Absolutely. So it's about bringing more, so particularly with suicide as this very delicate subject, as an example, it's about having this sort of, again, trying to reduce the taboo and normalise it, and say that, you know, not normalise it in the sense that it is an unfortunate part of life that we're trying to minimise, but nevertheless it's still a part of life, and therefore it needs to be dealt with as much attention as perhaps other parts of other difficult areas of our lives. And as you said, bringing it to people sometimes is also appropriate, and giving more of a bespoke service. I think that's a crucial part.
Helpful.
Yeah,
and we talk about your own mental health difficulty, which is OCD. So do you have any stats on that?
Well, I don't have a huge amount of stats to hand, but I know one of the key stat that always resonates with me is that OCD is considered by the World Health Organization, the WHO. It's considered to be one of the most destructive mental health conditions in terms of loss of earnings, in terms of loss of quality of life, and basically in terms of having an impact on your life as being pervasive in your life. It is a condition that is often hidden because the obsessions, the compulsions are hidden. People don't see it, but it is devastating, and it can lead to people not being able to get out of their bed due to the fear, the anxiety. And I think one thing that really annoys me with OCD, obviously, I've just explained the severity of it, and how, you know, it really is very much, and it's the fact that it's misunderstood. And, you know, there are programs on television that trivialise, for example, somebody who has a cleaning obsession, trivialises that. They phrase it like, I'm a little bit OCD. And it's actually really, you know, it's actually quite perverse, because we wouldn't trivialise a physical illness.
No.
So why would we trivialise a mental condition? So again, it's also making people aware of the severity of it, but also trying to make people aware of how they interact with it, and the words they use, and it's a two-sided approach really. But I think the way in which we can do that is through education.
Yeah.
That's the key. That will hopefully make both sides more aware and more informed. Yeah. That they can help. Both sides can deal with it, deal with the condition. They'd help each other rather than perhaps fighting against each other, as that's what often happens.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the TV situation because like I mentioned earlier to you, that I didn't know much about OCD, but the only side of it I've seen is the whole cleaning, and that's what they show you on TV. And as a result of that, when you're watching, because you don't really understand how deep that condition is, you just think it's something that's a bit
of a
strange,
a quirk,
just like it's weird. Why you're cleaning, the house is already clean. But it's more than that. So
it's far worse than that. It's a deep-seated anxiety where you think, or the person can think, well, if the house is not clean, that catastrophic things can happen, as with contamination of touching certain things, that they could then get very ill, or it could cause a person that they're close to be ill. There's also the check-in as well, which again could lead to catastrophic situations. I mean, this can take hours of people's days, years of people's lives, and it's all done often behind a closed door. And I said, if we can sounds a bit cheesy, but if we can open that door and people can see what's going on, then perhaps the person that's the outside world will understand it better, but also the person who's actually doing this wouldn't feel so ostracised or so stigmatised. I'm not saying they wouldn't feel that it just might make the recovery process that bit easier.
That's true. So where you are now, I could say meeting you and getting to speak to you, because you mentioned earlier how if this was a few years ago, you would not be able to have this interview. So what was the worst or the biggest hurdle you had to jump?
I think I've had to jump many difficult hurdles. It's been about picking myself up, and that's been the challenge. And that could happen daily, weekly. It's an ongoing challenge. And sometimes, if I've not been very well, it can be a huge challenge to get up, have a shower, get myself out, doing things. So it's that resilience that's been the challenge. Staying resilient, always believing that the recovery is possible, always believing that there is a better tomorrow. And I think, and that hope really, and I always think that and keeping that hope, that resilience, that little candle inside me burning, as long as I do that, that's the biggest hurdle, because if I can do that, I've always got a chance.
You can do anything.
Yeah, I do. And if some people think I might be a dreamer, but you know what, I do believe in that, because I think if we lose hope, if I lose that little candle inside me, then OCD's won. Yeah. So that's my biggest hurdle.
Yeah. Another question. So I'm aware that you're married now.
I am.
And so for you would you say that having somebody close by is something that has helped you for the better as well?
Absolutely. I think I've been married a year and a half now, and I think it's been amazing how having somebody close that understands me for me, and and realises the journey that I'm on, and realises that there'll be good days and there'll be some not so good days, and there'll be some really awful days. And I think having that, it gives me that stability, gives me that foundation, that bedrock to then move forward, because I know I'm coming from a stable place. And I think before I was married, I think there was far more instability. Yes, I had my parents, but it wasn't quite the same. And I think I think one of the biggest difficulties, or one of the biggest issues that people with OCD and mental health difficulties in general face, is the loneliness, or feeling that they're fighting this condition or these conditions alone. And I think that feeling of isolation can be massive and have a real negative effect. It did on me. So the fact these feelings of isolation have really dropped, I think has allowed me to really, push forward, and it's given me that stability to progress. And like I said, if I hadn't, a year and a half ago, it was a very different situation. So for me, it's been a huge catalyst. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying getting married is the way, but it can help.
Yeah. So,
and it did help for me.
Yeah. So loneliness definitely.
I think so.
Can trigger you more.
I think so because the thoughts that go around in your head, one's ruminating, one's thinking, and there's no sounding board. And sometimes a professional can give a professional's opinion of it, but it's not from the heart.
And they're not there.
And they're not
every day.
No, and they're not there at 2 a.m. They're not there, as much as they like to be. They're not, and so it's having that close person that just gets you for who you are, and I think that's so crucial. And it's been a real, it's really helped me to move forward.
That's good.
So I'm very, very thankful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
That's all right.
So what do you look forward to see in the next few years regarding mental health, especially mental health in men?
I look forward for us as a here in Nottingham, but also in nationwide, that we, or globally, that we push forward this awareness of mental health, but also that not the awareness is good to an extent, but there has to come a point where that we also start to do as well.
Yeah.
It's all well and good talking about something, celebrities, people like me advocating, but there has to be some sort of, something tangible where there are changes in systems, in provision that actually, allows for these difficulties to be looked at more appropriately. Because I think at the moment we are, due to a number of reasons, we're not perhaps giving mental health in terms of provision the respect it actually deserves. That's for a number of reasons, but the fact that it's very difficult often to access services, it takes a long time. It's a postcode lottery, waiting list. That's very difficult. And so if we can start to address those problems, I think it would be better. But again, keep going with the awareness, but also then start to put the awareness into practice.
Yeah.
Or the things we've learned from the awareness.
Yeah.
But it's a process, and like I said, I do believe we are. This time we're better than we were a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people we get talking about it, the more people we get advocating, it can only have positive consequences.
Exactly. Yeah, I really think that change is coming, and that it will definitely get better. But it will only get better when people get to share their stories.
Exactly.
So
and people converse.
Yes, yeah. So the way you're sharing your story, you could be in a random place, you talk about your experiences, and you wouldn't know that somebody in that room may have gone through the same thing. So it's really important to talk about it, share experiences, because that's how how we learn. Yeah, that's how you learn, and that's how you might end up saving a life. Or just giving someone that little push to go and get some help, and it's about and the more times we do that, the more we sort of then we make it more acceptable. Yeah.
So hopefully one stage, I hope one day it's as acceptable to say, if someone say I'm having mental health difficulties, as it is to say, I don't know, I've broken my leg. I think we're a long way off that yet.
Yeah.
But we're starting, and we are. From when I was growing up, we're so much further ahead. So let's look forward. I think the glass is very much half full, than half empty. But we just got to keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going. Stay resilient. Stay positive. And as you said, keep talking.
Yeah, and the last thing I would like to say is the importance of checking on your friends and your loved ones.
Absolutely.
Because that one little text of how are you, or you're beautiful, or I love you, can mean a lot.
Absolutely.
There are times when people are going through stuff, like you may be stressed, you may be going, I don't know, something may have happened.
Yeah.
I've had that before, where perhaps I'm having a really tough day, and then a friend of mine would just message me something like, have a lovely day, or
exactly.
oh, I love you, I miss you, just words of affirmation. Those things can really lift up your spirit, and those things could literally save somebody's life. Somebody could be in a really dark place, but the fact that they'll now get a message from somebody to show them that they're loved, letting people know that they're loved is so important.
Because I think when people are in a real difficult situation, they often feel unloved, they feel lonely, they feel ostracised, and isolated. And as you said, just having that link to a person can make all the difference.
Yeah.
And a person that is non-judgmental, that just says, okay, we're having a bad day, but it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, tomorrow could be better, or the day after can be better. And I think it's just giving that importance to it.
Yeah.
As we would if someone had a cold,
Yeah.
or somebody had had an operation, a physical operation. So it's about keeping it person centered, and just trying to be as supportive, as non-judgmental as we can.
Listening,
listening as well as talking. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
That's amazing. So
Yeah.
I think we've covered pretty much
Okay.
everything.
Okay.
And it was a really nice time talking to you and
you.
learning from your experiences. And I believe that there are people that will watch this interview and they'll be able to resonate with the things that you've been through, and they'll be able to learn from you as well and get the help that they need.
I think there's a lot of help out there, and it's just about it's there are many ways to access that. So stay positive, and I think we'll get there.
Yeah, definitely will. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you.